Greetings, dear friends. Here we are once again. I'm talking about Jesus Christ and Him crucified. I'm talking about Jesus Christ, God's Son, living in human beings. I'm talking about Christ evangelizing this world through human beings in whom He lives. I have many things to say, and I hope many people take my word to get into the Scripture and see whether or not these things are so. For many years, I pastored a church called Berean, and I chose that name for that church because the Scriptures say this: believers at Berea searched the Scriptures diligently to see whether or not the things they were being taught were of God. I still believe that strongly. If I wasn't telling you the truth on this broadcast, it would be because I wasn't in the Scriptures. If on this broadcast I got off somewhere and told you what my thing was and what God had shown me, which He has shown me things that are plainly written, but if I got to telling you all the things that God had shown me, making me somebody, I would be wrong. Why? Because Christ is my all in all. It is Christ who lives in me. No sense talking to you about me. He is my life. If He is, let me talk about my life, Christ. My life, Christ. Our scripture that we're studying right now is in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, and we have reached the latter part of the 14th verse. Now, I've been here a week or so dealing with the first lines. The first lines say, "But the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him." I haven't got to that line yet. Did you know what? I believe the greatest percentage of people who study the Bible do not believe what's written there entirely. What does this line I just read state? He said, they are foolishness unto him. The things of God are foolishness unto mortal men today. Think of it. Oh, how I love this book. Oh, how important it has been in my life. Oh, how thrilling it is to be able to preach Christ. Not me, to preach Christ to multitudes around the world. How wonderful that has been. But most people, when they read the Bible, find it foolishness. I told you in past broadcasts this week that Christ's words, His word to Paul, and Paul's words to us, had created a cultish religion. First place, this is not a religion. Second, I don't mind it being called cult because it isn't me. It isn't my truth. It isn't my works. Oh, it's His truth as me. It's His works as me. But I no longer live. Christ lives in me. So it's not I, it's not me, it's Him. And if I don't preach Him, I have failed you, because that's the only source of life in this day. The only source. And so the latter part of that first line says that the things of God are counted foolishness by people in the world. You see, they keep looking for God to be like a dog. They keep looking for Christ to be like some other kind of animal. here, you can see him, you can hear him, you can smell him. He's really here and he's alive. No, God's not like that. He's not like that at all. He put Christ in you. That wasn't to make us fools. That wasn't to make us something important. That was to make Christ important. When God put Christ in me, it was his whole intention to use these eyes of mine, to use these ears of mine, to use this mouth of mine, to use these hands of mine, to use these feet of mine. That was his intention. His intention with Christ in me was good for my salvation, was good for my daily living, lots of things it was good for, but evangelization was the key point. He put Christ in me that Christ might use me. Not use me, but use me as parts. As parts. Like the eyes, the ears, the hands, the feet. To use me, the me that was body, for his glory. But he also took my mind and said that in order for making this work, you're going to have the mind of Christ, because the Christ who lives in you won't take a mind of the world. He won't take a mind of man's wisdom. He won't take the mind of foolishness. He'll take your mind and he will convert your mind to him. A literal thing. It is a literal thing. That's what Christianity is. That's what grace is. Grace is a literal thing. We don't do anything to get it because God has already provided it, created it, and provided it. All we have to do is reach out and take it. That's what salvation is. People under the law are stupid. The Bible teaches law. It was okay in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament, he teaches grace. You don't have to do anything to get grace. You don't have to do anything to make it work. You simply reach out and take it. If you love God, you've taken something good, because Christ was put into you the moment you took it. He's your life. The grace life is Christ's life. You understand that? The hard works life is Christ's hard works today. Paul said, not I that lives, but Christ that lives in me. It's not his works. It's Christ's works as him. That's what it's supposed to be. You say, well, I do that all the time. I know it's the Lord doing it. Is he doing it as you? If he's not, then they're not getting the true gospel, because you'll fail. I'll fail. Anybody will fail on their own. But now with Christ in me, should I fail, it was Christ's message I preached, and others will still get it. I may fall away. I could fall away, but I don't want to. I'm not trying to, and I won't, by God's grace. But I'll continue to give him my body parts, that part of me that he wants. That's what he wanted out of Christians. That's what he wanted from Christianity, was to have a group of people who would give themselves to Christ, who would live in them, and that would be the evangelist, that would be the preacher, that would be the teacher. But instead, everybody with Christ still in them went on their way to become something within themselves. They went on to become somebody important within themselves, somebody highly educated, somebody highly taught and had a good Bible understanding. No, that's not what God wanted. God wanted Christ to work out of the believer, every believer. But instead, we got it narrowed down now, that instead of having 1 billion Christians advertising Christ on this earth, we've got a mixed up church with very few people who are Christ persons. Who are Christ persons. You know what a Christ person is? That's a Christian. A Christian. That's why the term was made in the first place. I do believe that. Christians were called because Christ came out of them. You understand that? That's the gospel. That's the gospel. So the verse we're on, 14th verse of 1 Corinthians 2, said, for those who is talking about the first line, for those who didn't care about the Spirit of God, the next line says, for they are foolishness unto him. Who is foolishness unto God? It's somebody that preaches the gospel without God's help. Somebody who preaches the gospel without Christ inside of them, motivating, directing, and using them. What about that? They are foolishness unto me, and neither will God know them. Next line, last line says, neither can he know them because they are spiritually discerned. Neither can he know them. If you're naturally led, God doesn't know you. What happened to Jesus? If they're saved, Jesus got lost in them. Jesus got lost in the believer. What happened? The believer thought he could do it within himself. He didn't know that every time he had been successful, it was Christ. It wasn't him in the first place. Believers can be very stupid, you know. And when they look like they're getting smarter and they can do greater things within themselves, we all rise up and say, oh, let's back them, let's support them, let's be a part of them. My friends, that's foolishness. Because Christ lives in every born-again believer. God's purpose for humanity was Christ living in humans. That's our message. That's what we've got to do. That's what we want to do. Are these things that bring Christ alive out of us. Out of us. I used to think Christ was walking the aisles of the street and he's coming into this church building, and I used to have a big tent and he's coming under this tent. I used to see a lot of strange things. Must have been strange to God because Christ was already there. He's already there. One group of people gather together, whether they're 10 or 15 in a Bible study, whether there are hundreds in a church meeting or thousands, Christ is already there. He's there represented in every one of those believers. And the message that comes forth needs to be a message that empowers, that helps believers to give up to Christ, to be led by Christ and to Christ's will, and live Christ's words. That's the whole purpose of Christ in you as the hope of glory, that you would live and bring forth Christ's word. It isn't a hard life, dear friends. It's a hard life because we've ignored the true scriptures and we have jumped on scriptures somebody explained to us and we feel good about them. You can't do that. You've got to accept what Paul says because he is the apostle between the cross and the rapture. Learn him. Get a hold of him. Study him. Because God entrusted him with the truth. And he, Paul, has given it to us. What then shall we do? That's the question. What then shall we do? God love you and bless you till we meet together again. Bye-bye.